The last research station above planet Villani Prime shook violently as another enemy ship fired its weapons. Elder Scientist Taiho grabbed the wall to keep from falling as lights flickered and alarms screamed throughout the metal corridors. Through the main window he could see his beautiful blue and green homeworld burning far below. Orange flames spread across entire continents. Black smoke covered the white clouds. Cities that had stood for thousands of years now lay in ruins. The Korthax Empire had come to his world, just as they had come to dozens of others before. "Sir, we are losing power to the main systems," called out his young assistant Jisoo from across the control room. Her hands moved quickly over the glowing buttons and screens, trying to keep their station working. "The Korthax ships are targeting all our orbital platforms." Taiho watched as another research station exploded in a ball of fire and metal. Soon his station would meet the same fate. Soon the last of his people would be gone forever. The Villani had been a peaceful race for over 10,000 years. They studied the stars, grew beautiful gardens, and created wonderful art. They had no armies, no weapons of war, no knowledge of how to fight. The Korthax were different. They lived only to conquer and destroy. Their gray warships were massive and powerful. Their soldiers were brutal and showed no mercy. For 300 years they had swept across this section of the galaxy like a terrible storm. No one had ever stopped them. No one had even slowed them down. "How many of our people escaped to the evacuation ships?" Taiho asked, though he feared the answer. Jisoo checked her screens with tears in her eyes. "Only 2 million made it off-world before the Korthax destroyed the spaceports. 8 million others are still trapped on the surface. 8 million Villani still alive, but not for long. The Korthax did not take prisoners. They did not allow other races to live under their rule. When they conquered a world, they took everything useful and killed everyone else. It was their way. Taiho had lived for over 200 years. He had seen his people grow and learn and become happy. Now he would watch them all die. Unless... "Jisoo, can we still send messages to other star systems?" he asked. The young Villani checked her instruments. "Yes, sir, but barely. The communication array is badly damaged. We might have enough power for one strong signal. Then we will send a distress call to anyone who might listen." Jisoo looked confused. "But sir, we already tried that. The Altarian Council said they could not help us. The Zephyrian Trade Union refused to get involved. Even the peaceful Crystalline Brotherhood closed their borders to our refugees. Everyone is too afraid of the Korthax." Taiho moved to the main communication console. His old hands worked slowly but carefully. "Then we will send our message further, to parts of the galaxy where other races might hear us. Races we have never met. That could be very dangerous," Jisoo warned. "There are stories about strange beings in the outer regions. Creatures so violent and terrible that even the Korthax avoid them." "Child, we are already dead," Taiho said sadly. "What harm can stories do to us now?" He began to type his message in Galactic Standard, the language most space-traveling races could understand. His words were simple but desperate. "This is Elder Taiho of the Villani Republic calling any civilization that receives this signal. Our homeworld is under attack by the Korthax Empire. Our defenses have failed. Our evacuation ships are full, but millions of our people remain trapped. We ask for any assistance you can provide. We have nothing to offer in return except our gratitude and the knowledge that you saved an innocent race from extinction. Please, if anyone can hear this, we need your help." He read the message 3 times to make sure it was correct, then looked at Jisoo. "Send this on all frequencies. Use all the power we have left." The young assistant hesitated. "Sir, if we use all our power for this transmission, we will not have enough energy left for life support. We will die as we lived," Taiho finished for her. "Trying to help our people." Jisoo nodded and began the transmission sequence. The station's lights dimmed as every bit of available energy fed into the communication array. The message shot out into space at the speed of light, carrying their final hope to the stars. For the next 6 hours, Taiho and Jisoo sat in their darkening station, listening to the static from their receivers. No one answered their call. The only sounds were the distant explosions as more Korthax ships destroyed the remaining orbital platforms. Then, just as their oxygen began to run low, something unexpected happened. A voice came through the static, speaking in heavily accented Galactic Standard. "Unknown vessel, this is Captain Minho of the human exploration ship Soul's Pride. We have received your distress transmission. Please respond with your current location and status." Taiho and Jisoo stared at each other in shock. Humans. The message had been answered by humans. Every civilized race in the galaxy knew about humans, but only from whispered stories and frightening legends. They were said to be small in size but impossibly violent. Other races spoke of them only in quiet, fearful tones. It was said that humans fought terrible wars against their own kind, for no reason anyone could understand. It was said they never surrendered, never showed mercy, and never forgot an enemy. Most aliens believed humans were just stories told to frighten children. Others thought they might be real but lived so far away they would never be seen. A few claimed to have met them, but those few usually ended their stories by saying they hoped never to meet them again. Now these legendary beings had answered their call for help. With shaking hands, Taiho activated his transmitter one last time. "Captain Minho, this is Elder Taiho. We are in orbit around Vallani Prime in the Kepler 442 system. Our world is under attack by a Korthax fleet of approximately 200 warships. Our people are dying. Can you help us?" There was a long pause before the human captain replied. When he spoke, his voice was calm and steady, like someone discussing the weather instead of a desperate battle for survival. "Elder Taiho, we are approximately 12 hours away from your position. Hold on. Help is coming." The transmission ended, leaving Taiho and Jisoo alone in the growing darkness of their dying station. Outside their window, the Korthax ships continued their terrible work, turning a peaceful world into a graveyard. But for the first time in days, Elder Taiho felt something he had almost forgotten. Hope. Captain Minho stood on the bridge of the Soul's Pride, watching the main screen show the Vallani system ahead. What he saw made his jaw tighten with anger. Dozens of burning ships floated in space like broken toys. Massive gray warships moved between them like sharks, firing on anything that still moved. "Captain, we are getting signals from the Korthax fleet," reported Communications Officer Nari from her station. "They are ordering us to leave this system immediately. What exactly are they saying?" Minho asked, never taking his eyes off the destruction before them. Nari listened to her headphones for a moment. "The message says, 'Unknown vessel, you have entered Korthax territory. Depart now or be destroyed. This is your only warning.'" Tactical Officer Ji-won looked up from her weapons console. "Captain, I count over 200 enemy ships. They have us completely outnumbered. Our orders were to avoid contact with hostile alien forces." Engineer Hyuk spoke from the back of the bridge, his voice quiet but firm. "Sir, those people down there sent a distress call. They are dying. We cannot just leave them." Minho nodded slowly. He had read the reports about the Korthax Empire. They were conquerors who destroyed entire civilizations for sport. The kind of evil that his grandfather had told him stories about from the old wars back on Earth. The kind of evil that demanded someone stand up and fight back, no matter the odds. "Nari, open a channel to the Korthax fleet commander," he ordered. "Sir, are you sure that is wise?" Ji-won asked. "If we talk to them, they will know we are human. The aliens in this region might react badly to our presence." "Let them," Minho said. "Open the channel." The main screen flickered and showed the interior of a Korthax command ship. The alien commander was tall and covered in gray scales. His yellow eyes were cold and cruel. Behind him, Minho could see other Korthax soldiers working at their stations. "I am War Commander Vextar of the Korthax Third Fleet," the alien said in perfect galactic standard. "You are trespassing in territory claimed by the Korthax Empire. Identify yourself and state your business here." "I am Captain Minho of the human exploration vessel Soul's Pride," Minho replied calmly. "I am here as a diplomatic observer to witness your operation." Several of the Korthax officers on the screen looked at each other with expressions Minho could not read. War Commander Vextar leaned forward, studying the human captain with obvious interest. "Human," Vextar said slowly, as if testing the word. "We have heard stories about your kind. Small creatures from a distant world. Tell me, human, why does a diplomatic observer travel alone in a single small ship?" "Because one ship is all I need to observe," Minho answered. "I am here to see how the mighty Korthax Empire deals with a peaceful race that poses no threat to anyone." Vextar laughed, a harsh sound that sent chills down the spines of everyone on the human bridge. "The Vallani had something we wanted, their beautiful world and its resources. They refused to surrender it peacefully, so we took it by force. That is how the galaxy works, human. The strong take what they want from the weak. And what happens to the Villani people? Minho asked. They die, of course. We have no use for them. Vextar waved a clawed hand dismissively. We will finish our work here within 1 day. You may observe until then, but do not interfere. When we are done, you will leave this system and never return. The transmission ended, leaving the human crew staring at the blank screen. Captain, what are we going to do? Hayek asked. We cannot fight 200 warships with one exploration vessel. No, Minho agreed. We cannot, but we are not going to abandon those people either. He turned to Nari. Can you establish a secure communication link with the Villani survivors? Nari worked at her console for several minutes. I am picking up weak signals from the planet's surface and a few remaining orbital stations. The Korthax are jamming most frequencies, but I think I can get through on an old emergency band. Do it. The screen showed the tired face of Elder Taiho, calling from what looked like an underground shelter. Behind him, Minho could see other Villani civilians, including children, all looking scared and desperate. Captain Minho, Taiho said with obvious relief, thank you for answering our call, but I must warn you, the Korthax have forbidden anyone from helping us. If they discover you are talking to us, let me worry about the Korthax, Minho interrupted. Tell me about your people. How many are still alive? Where are they located? We estimate 8 million Villani remain on the planet's surface, Taiho replied. Most are hiding in underground shelters and caves. We also have about 50,000 on various space stations and ships throughout the system. The Korthax are hunting us systematically. They give us no chance to surrender or negotiate. A younger Villani appeared beside Taiho. I am Engineer Sora, she said. Captain, we have studied your species from the few records in our databases. Humans have a reputation as fierce warriors. Is it true that you wage war against your own kind? Minho was quiet for a moment. Yes, it is true. Humans have fought many wars. We learned to fight because we had to. Our world was not always a peaceful place. Then you understand combat tactics and strategy? Asked another voice. A male Villani moved into view. I am Historian Doyen. I have read about something humans call asymmetric warfare. Fighting when you are outnumbered and outgunned. We know something about that, yes, Minho said carefully. Elder Taiho leaned closer to his screen. Captain, we do not expect you to fight the Korthax for us. We know that would be suicide. But perhaps you could carry word of our fate to other civilizations. Tell them what happened here so our people will be remembered. Before Minho could answer, Jiwan spoke urgently from her station. Captain, I am detecting Korthax patrol ships heading for the planet. They are targeting the underground shelters where the civilians are hiding. On the screen, alarms began sounding in the Villani shelter. Explosions could be heard in the distance, getting closer. We have to move deeper underground, Taiho said quickly. Captain Minho, it has been an honor to speak with you. If this is goodbye, Elder Taiho, Minho said firmly. This is not goodbye. Stay strong. Help is coming. But Captain, Sora said with tears in her eyes, what help can one ship provide against such a large fleet? Minho smiled for the first time since entering the system. You would be surprised what humans can do when we put our minds to it. Nari, send a coded message on all human frequencies. Tell them we have a Code 7 situation here. Sir, a Code 7? Nari asked with wide eyes. Are you certain? Absolutely certain, Minho replied. It is time to show the galaxy what humans do when innocent people are in danger. As the Soul's Pride moved deeper into the Villani system, none of the aliens watching knew that Code 7 was the human military designation for one simple concept. Civilians under attack by hostile forces. And throughout human space, every ship that received that message began changing course toward the Villani system. War Commander Vextar stood on the command deck of his flagship, watching his sensors with growing confusion. Over the past 6 hours, 17 more ships had arrived at the edge of the Villani system. But these were not warships. They looked like cargo vessels, mining ships, and civilian transports. Some appeared to be hastily converted from their original purposes. Commander, we are receiving identification signals from the new arrivals, reported his communications officer. They all claim to be human vessels. Humans, Vextar repeated slowly. He had heard the stories, of course. Every military commander in this sector of the galaxy had heard whispered tales about the small, violent creatures from the outer rim. But these ships did not look threatening. Most of them were smaller than his escort vessels. Should we destroy them, Commander? Asked his weapons officer. Not yet, Vextar decided. I want to understand what they are doing here. 18 ships against our fleet of 200 is not a threat. It is barely worth noticing. On the largest of the human ships, Admiral Gayung studied the tactical displays showing the Korthak's fleet positions. She was a small woman with graying hair and tired eyes, but when she spoke, every human captain in the system listened carefully. "Report from all vessels," she ordered into her communications headset. "Freighter Captain Siak here. My cargo hold is loaded and ready for Operation Thunderbolt." Commander Inha reporting. "Fast attack group is in position and waiting for your signal. Fighter Squadron Leader Kang Jun standing by. All pilots are briefed and ready." Admiral Gayung nodded with satisfaction. "And our engineering teams?" "Engineer Hayek here, Admiral. We have been working with the Villani survivors to prepare their underground networks. They are fast learners when properly motivated." The Admiral turned to her tactical officer. "What is the status of the Korthak's fleet?" "They have divided into hunting groups to search for remaining Villani civilians. Classic overwhelming force doctrine. They expect any resistance to collapse quickly when faced with superior numbers. Then they do not understand humans very well." Admiral Gayung said quietly. "All ships, this is Admiral Gayung. Execute Operation Thunderbolt in 30 minutes. Remember, our goal is not to win quickly. Our goal is to make them pay for every meter of space." Aboard the Soul's Pride, Captain Minho watched the preparations with growing concern. "Admiral, are you certain this plan will work? We are still vastly outnumbered." Admiral Gayung's voice came through his speakers with calm confidence. "Captain, the Korthaks expect us to fight like every other species they have encountered. They expect us to form battle lines, exchange fire at long range, and surrender when our losses become too heavy. They have no experience fighting an enemy that refuses to follow those rules." "And what rules do we follow?" Minho asked. "The same rules humans have always followed when fighting for our survival. We adapt, we endure, and we never give up." On the Korthak's flagship, War Commander Vextar was becoming increasingly irritated. His communications officers had been intercepting human transmissions for the past hour, but they made no sense. The humans kept referring to historical battles with strange names like Thermopylae, Stalingrad, and Midway. They spoke about tactics that seemed completely illogical. "What does it mean when they say, 'Remember the Alamo'?" Vextar demanded of his intelligence officer. "Unknown, Commander. Our databases have no information about human military history. We know only that they are reported to be unusually aggressive for such a small species." "Aggressive," Vextar snorted. "Let us see how aggressive they remain when they face the full power of the Korthak's Third Fleet." Down on the Villani homeworld, Engineer Sora worked frantically alongside Engineer Hyuk in an abandoned mining complex. Around them, dozens of Villani civilians helped modify excavation equipment under Hyuk's patient instructions. "I still do not understand how this will help," Sora admitted as she welded power cables to a large drilling machine. "These are tools for digging tunnels, not weapons of war." Hyuk smiled grimly. "Sometimes the best weapons are the ones your enemy does not expect. Your people built this mining complex to dig deep into the planet. We are going to use it to dig something else entirely." "What?" "Graves for Korthak soldiers." Historian Doyen looked up from where he was studying tactical plans on a portable computer. "Huck, I have been reading about human military history in your database files. Your species has been fighting wars for thousands of years. How do you live with such violence?" "We do not like war," Hyuk replied honestly. "Most humans hate it. But we learned long ago that sometimes you must fight to protect the things you love. And when we fight to win no matter the cost. Even if it means dying?" Sora asked quietly. "Especially if it means dying. Dead heroes are still heroes. Dead cowards are just dead." Above them, in the cold darkness of space, the human fleet began to move. But instead of forming neat battle lines like every other military force the Korthaks had ever faced, they scattered in all directions like seeds in the wind. Some headed directly toward the largest Korthak ships. Others seemed to be fleeing toward the outer system. A few appeared to be targeting the planet itself. "What are they doing?" Vextar demanded. "This is not how space battles are fought." His tactical officer studied the displays with growing confusion. "Commander, their movement patterns make no tactical sense. Some ships are on collision courses with our vessels. Others appear to be retreating. They have no unified strategy." "Then they are fools, and this will be easier than I thought." Vextar turned to his weapons officer. "All ships open fire. Destroy the human fleet." The Korthak's warships opened fire with their massive energy weapons, filling space with deadly beams of light. Several human ships were hit immediately, their shields failing under the tremendous assault. But instead of turning away or calling for help, the damaged human vessels increased speed and headed directly toward the Korthax ships that had hit them. "Commander," his sensor officer called out in alarm. "The damaged human ships are not trying to escape. They are accelerating toward our vessels." Vextar watched in disbelief as a human cargo ship, its hull torn open and atmosphere venting into space, slammed directly into one of his heavy cruisers. The explosion lit up the darkness like a small sun, destroying both vessels completely. "They are ramming us," he whispered. "They are deliberately ramming us." As if that was a signal, the entire human fleet suddenly changed tactics. The ships that had seemed to be retreating turned around and attacked at full speed. The ones heading for the planet began landing troops in the underground tunnel systems. The fast ships started darting between Korthax vessels like angry insects, too quick to target effectively. And through it all, Admiral Gayung's calm voice could be heard on all human frequencies, giving orders that chilled the blood of every alien listening. "All units, remember your training. Make every shot count. Make every death meaningful. Show them what humans do when innocent people are threatened." For the first time in his long military career, War Commander Vextar began to understand why other species spoke of humans in whispered, frightened voices. The battle had been raging for 3 hours, and War Commander Vextar was beginning to realize that nothing in his military training had prepared him for fighting humans. On his tactical display, red dots representing damaged or destroyed Korthax ships were appearing faster than he could count them. "Status report," he barked at his officers. "We have lost 47 vessels," his tactical officer reported with barely controlled panic. "The humans have lost only 12 ships, but they keep fighting even when their vessels are completely destroyed." Vextar did not understand what his officer meant until he saw it for himself. A human fighter craft, its engines dead and weapons offline, was drifting toward one of his battleships. Any sane pilot would have ejected by now. Instead, the human fighter pilot aimed his powerless craft at the battleship's weapon systems and crashed directly into them. "By the void," Vextar whispered. "They use their own deaths as weapons." On the bridge of his converted freighter, Captain Siak gave his final orders to his crew. "All hands abandon ship. Get to the escape pods now." "Captain, what about you?" his first officer asked. Siak looked at the massive Korthax dreadnought growing larger on his main screen. His cargo hold was packed with mining explosives that Engineer Hyuk had modified for maximum damage. "Someone has to make sure we hit our target." "Now go, that is an order!" As his crew evacuated, Siak sat alone on his bridge, guiding his ship toward the enemy vessel. He thought about his wife back on Earth, about his children who would grow up in a galaxy where evil beings like the Korthax could not simply destroy innocent civilizations without consequence. The impact was visible from across the solar system. Down on the planet's surface, Engineer Sora watched the explosion through a tunnel periscope. Beside her, Engineer Hyuk was coordinating with human soldiers who had landed during the battle. "Your Captain Siak," Sora said quietly. "He had a family, did he not? I heard him mention them in his final transmission." "Yes," Hyuk replied, never taking his eyes off his tactical display. "A wife and 2 daughters. And he chose to die for people he had never met. People who are not even his own species." Hyuk finally looked at her, and Sora saw something in his eyes that frightened her. "That is what humans do. We die for strangers because someone has to. We die for strangers because it is right." Above ground, the Korthax had landed thousands of soldiers to hunt down the remaining Villani civilians, but they found themselves fighting in terrain they did not understand, against an enemy they could not predict. The mining tunnels had been turned into a maze of traps and ambush points. Korthax soldiers, trained to fight in open battlefields with superior numbers, found themselves facing small groups of humans who appeared from hidden passages, struck fast and hard, then vanished back into the tunnels before reinforcements could arrive. "Squad 7, report your position," called a Korthax sergeant into his communicator. Static answered him. Squad 7 had been found an hour later, all dead, with a simple message written on the tunnel wall in their own blood. "Remember Earth." Fighter Squadron Leader Kang Jun led his remaining pilots in their 5th attack run against the Korthax fleet. Half his squadron was gone, but the surviving pilots showed no signs of fear or hesitation. "Phoenix Leader to all birds," he called over the radio. "We are outnumbered, outgunned, and almost out of fuel. Any pilot who wants to withdraw to a safe distance has my permission. The responses came back immediately. Phoenix 2 staying with you. Leader. Phoenix 4 is not going anywhere. Phoenix 7 ready for another run. Kang Jun smiled grimly. These young pilots understood what was at stake here. This was not just about saving the Vallani. This was about sending a message to every evil force in the galaxy. Humans would not tolerate the strong crushing the weak. All right, Phoenix Squadron. One more time into the fire. On the Korthax flagship, War Commander Vextar was receiving reports that made no sense to his military mind. His forces were winning the battle by any reasonable measure. They still had more ships, more soldiers, more weapons, but somehow, they were losing. Commander, the human ground forces have destroyed 3 of our supply depots, reported his ground operations officer. They seem to know exactly where to strike to cause maximum damage. How is that possible? We chose those locations randomly. The Vallani civilians are helping them, sir. The humans have convinced the survivors to fight alongside them. Vexitar turned to stare at his officer. The Vallani are not warriors. They are a peaceful species with no military tradition. They are not peaceful anymore, Commander. Reports indicate they are fighting with the same determination as the humans. They appear to have learned human tactics very quickly. Communications Officer Nari, working from a hidden position in the asteroid belt, intercepted Korthax military transmissions and relayed them to Admiral Gayung. Admiral, enemy morale is breaking down. Their commanders are reporting that their soldiers are afraid to enter the tunnel systems. Afraid? Admiral Gayung asked. The Korthax are not known for cowardice. They are afraid of fighting humans in close combat, Admiral. Word is spreading through their ranks about what happened to the units that tried to clear the tunnels. Apparently we fight very differently than other species. Admiral Gayung nodded with grim satisfaction. Other species fight to win territory or resources. We fight to protect innocent lives. That makes us much more dangerous. In the underground command center, historian Doyen was documenting everything he witnessed. As a scholar, he understood that he was watching history being made. Hayuk, I must ask you something. Why do humans fight this way? Other species try to minimize their casualties. You seem to embrace death as a tactical option. Hyuk paused in his work to consider the question. Because we know that some things are worth dying for. Freedom is worth dying for. Justice is worth dying for. The right of innocent people to live in peace is worth dying for. But if you all die fighting for these ideals, who will be left to enjoy them? Someone will be left, Hyuk said simply. Someone is always left, and they will remember what we died for. As the battle continued to rage both in space and on the planet's surface, War Commander Vextar made a decision that would have been unthinkable just hours earlier. For the first time in Korthax military history, he gave the order to retreat from a battle they were winning, because he was beginning to understand that humans had a very different definition of victory. For humans, victory was not about who had more ships or soldiers at the end of the battle. For humans, victory was about making sure that evil paid such a terrible price for its actions that it would think twice before acting again. War Commander Vextar stood among the wreckage of his command bridge, trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong. His magnificent Third Fleet, which had conquered dozens of worlds without losing a single major vessel, now limped through space with half its ships destroyed or crippled. Commander, we are receiving another transmission from the human fleet, his communications officer reported. The young Korthax soldier looked exhausted and frightened. Put it on the main screen, Vexitar ordered. Admiral Gayung's face appeared, and Vexitar was surprised to see that she looked as tired as his own crew. Her uniform was torn and there was a bandage on her forehead, but her eyes were still sharp and determined. War Commander Vextar, she said in perfectly clear galactic standard, I am offering you one chance to surrender. Vexitar laughed bitterly. Surrender? Admiral, you have perhaps 60 ships left. I still command over 100 vessels. Why would I surrender to you? Because in the past 8 hours we have killed more of your soldiers than have died in the last 50 years of Korthax expansion. Admiral Gayung replied calmly. Because your troops are afraid to leave their ships. Because you have learned something that every evil civilization eventually learns. Humans are very good at making bad people pay for their choices. The transmission ended, leaving Vextar staring at the blank screen. His tactical officer spoke into the silence. Commander, the human admiral is correct. We have lost over 30,000 soldiers. Our remaining ground forces are requesting immediate evacuation from the planet's surface. 30,000. Vexitar repeated slowly. In 8 hours. The number was almost impossible to believe. The Korthax Third Fleet was an elite unit. They had conquered entire star systems with fewer casualties. On the planet below, Engineer Hayek emerged from a tunnel entrance, his armor covered in dirt and worse things. Around him, Villani civilians who had become guerrilla fighters in the span of a single day were celebrating a successful ambush. "How many Korthax soldiers did we eliminate?" asked Engineer Sora, who now carried a weapon taken from a dead enemy. 200 in that attack, Hayek replied. "But more importantly, we captured their communications equipment. Now we know where they plan to land their next wave of troops." Historian Doyen looked up from where he was treating a wounded Villani fighter. "Yuk, I have been thinking about something you said earlier. You told Sora that humans fight for strangers because someone has to, but there must be more to it than that." Hayek sat down heavily on a piece of rubble. For the first time since the battle began, he looked his age. "You want to know why we really fight like this?" "Yes, because we know what it is like to be the victims. Every human alive today is descended from people who suffered under bullies and tyrants. We know what it feels like to be helpless while strong people hurt the weak, and we promised ourselves long ago that we would never let it happen again if we could stop it." Above them, the space battle continued with desperate intensity. Captain Minho, his ship damaged but still fighting, led a group of human vessels in an attack on the Korthax command ship. His bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, even though they all knew this would probably be their final mission. "Captain," called Tactical Officer Jiwan from her station, "we have a clear shot at the Korthax flagship's main reactor. But to get close enough, we will have to fly directly into their defensive fire." "How close do we need to get?" Minho asked. "Close enough that we will not survive the explosion when their reactor goes critical." Minho looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These people had families waiting for them back on Earth. They had lives and dreams and futures ahead of them. And they were willing to throw it all away for aliens they had never met until yesterday. "All crew members who wish to evacuate to the escape pods have 60 seconds, he announced over the ship's internal communications. "No," one moved. "Very well then," Minho said quietly. "Jiwon, plot an intercept course for the Korthax flagship. Maximum speed." As the Soul's Pride accelerated toward certain destruction, Communications Officer Nari managed to establish one final contact with the Villani survivors on the planet. Elder Taiho's face appeared on the screen, calling from a shelter that was now being used as a military command post. "Captain Minho, we have been watching the battle. Your sacrifice will be remembered for as long as the Villani people exist." "Elder Taiho," Minho replied, "make sure your people remember something else. Remember that evil can be defeated. It just requires good people who are willing to pay the price." The Soul's Pride struck the Korthax flagship's reactor chamber at full speed. The explosion could be seen from orbit, a brilliant flash that briefly outshone the system's sun. War Commander Vextar survived the destruction of his flagship only because he had been inspecting damage on another ship. As he watched his command vessel die, taking the Soul's Pride with it, he finally understood something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. The humans had not been trying to win a traditional military victory. They had been trying to teach a lesson. And the lesson was simple. If you hurt innocent people, humans will find you. And when they do, you will pay a price so terrible that you will wish you had never been born. "All remaining ships," he ordered quietly, "withdraw from the system immediately." His communications officer stared at him in shock. "Commander, we can still win this battle. We have more ships than the humans." "No," Vextar said firmly. "We cannot win this battle. Because humans do not fight to win battles. They fight to win wars. And wars are won by whoever is willing to sacrifice the most." As the surviving Korthax ships began to retreat, Admiral Guyong received a message that made her smile for the first time in hours. "Admiral, this is Transport Captain Junho. The evacuation fleet has arrived. We can begin moving Villani civilians to safety immediately." "Evacuation fleet?" she asked. "Yes, Admiral. Every human colony within 50 light years sent ships when they heard about Code 7. We have enough transport capacity to relocate the entire Villani population if necessary." "Admiral," Guyung looked at the tactical display showing the retreating Korthax fleet. They would be back someday, she knew. Evil always came back. But when they returned, they would remember this battle. They would remember what happened when they tried to destroy an innocent civilization while humans were watching. "Begin the evacuation," she ordered, "and send a message to all human colonies. Mission accomplished. The Villani people are under our protection now." Down on the planet, Engineer Hugh helped Elder Taiho board one of the first evacuation ships. The old Villani scientist looked around at the human soldiers and volunteers who had risked everything to save his people. "Yuke, I have one final question," Taiho said. "Your people call this galaxy dangerous because of species like the Korthax, but after seeing what humans can do when they choose to fight, I think the galaxy is dangerous for a very different reason." "What do you mean?" "I think the galaxy is dangerous because it contains humans, and that is the most terrifying thought any evil being could possibly have." As the evacuation continued, news of the battle began to spread across the galaxy. The Korthax Third Fleet, which had seemed unstoppable for decades, had been broken by a small human force fighting to protect strangers. And in the dark corners of space, where other predator species planned their own campaigns of conquest, a new fear began to grow. A fear of small, determined beings who fought like demons when innocent lives were at stake. A fear of humans. 6 months after the Battle of Villani Prime, the galaxy was a different place. The news of what had happened in that distant system spread through space lanes and communication networks like wildfire, carried by merchants, diplomats, and refugees who could hardly believe what they were reporting. On the new Villani colony world of Haven's Rest, Engineer Sora stood in the center of a bustling construction site. Around her, humans and Villani worked side by side, building homes and schools for the 8 million refugees who had been saved from the Korthax Empire. "The foundation for the new university is complete," reported Engineer Hugh, who had volunteered to stay and help with the reconstruction effort. "Your people will have a place to continue their research and education." Sora smiled as she watched Villani children playing with human children in a nearby park. The two species had become fast friends during the evacuation, bonding over shared experiences that neither would ever forget. "Hugh, I have been studying human history for these past months," she said. "I found something interesting in your records about a place called Earth." "What did you find?" "Your planet had many different nations and tribes that fought wars against each other for thousands of years. But when an outside threat appeared, when evil forces tried to conquer innocent people, all the human tribes would unite to fight together." "Is that correct?" Hugh nodded. "Yes, that is how we learned to be what we are today. We learned that some fights are bigger than our differences." In another part of the colony, historian Doyun was working on his greatest project, a complete record of the battle that had saved his people. He interviewed every survivor, collected every transmission, and documented every act of heroism he could find. Elder Taiho often visited him in his research center. "How is the historical record coming along?" the old scientist asked during one such visit. "It is almost complete," Doyun replied, "but I keep discovering new details about what the humans did for us. Did you know that Captain Minho had a son back on Earth? A boy who was planning to become an engineer like his father?" Taiho was quiet for a moment. "And now that boy will grow up without his father?" "Yes. But he will grow up in a galaxy where his father's sacrifice prevented the extinction of an entire species." "I have been corresponding with the boy's mother. She says she is proud of what her husband did." "The humans have a very different way of looking at death than we do," Taiho observed. "Yes, they do. For them, death is not the end of the story. It is part of the story, and they write their stories with their choices." Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, War Commander Vextar sat in a military tribunal on the Korthax homeworld. He faced charges of cowardice for retreating from a battle his superiors believed he should have won easily. "You had 150 ships remaining when you ordered the retreat," the tribunal leader accused. "The humans had fewer than 60 vessels. How do you explain your decision?" Vextar looked around the room at the faces of his fellow officers. They had never fought humans before. They did not understand what he had learned in that terrible battle. "Honored tribunal," he said slowly. "We won every engagement by traditional military standards. We destroyed more of their ships than they destroyed of ours. We killed more of their soldiers than they killed of ours. By every measure of warfare we understand we were victorious." "Then why did you retreat?" "Because humans do not fight by traditional standards. They fight by different rules entirely. Rules that make victory meaningless if the cost is too high for your enemies to bear. The tribunal leader looked confused. Explain yourself clearly, War Commander. Honored tribunal, we could have eventually defeated the human fleet, but they would have made us pay such a terrible price that our victory would have been worthless. They would have killed so many of our soldiers and destroyed so many of our ships that we would have been unable to continue our expansion for decades. Vextar paused, remembering the faces of the human fighters who had died ramming his ships rather than surrender. More importantly, they would have sent a message to every species in the galaxy. The Korthax can be hurt. They can be made to bleed. They can be forced to retreat. That message would have been worth more than 1,000 fleets to our enemies. The tribunal was silent for a long moment. Finally, the leader spoke. War Commander Vextar, you are hereby relieved of command and assigned to intelligence analysis. Your new mission is to study human military capabilities and develop strategies for avoiding future conflicts with their species. As Vextar left the tribunal chamber, he wondered if such strategies were even possible. How do you avoid conflict with beings who travel across the galaxy to fight for strangers? Back on Haven's Rest, Admiral Gayung was meeting with representatives from several other alien civilizations. Word of the human intervention had spread, and other species wanted to understand what it meant for the balance of power in the galaxy. Admiral Gayung, said Ambassador Kreltan of the Alterian Council, my government wishes to establish formal diplomatic relations with humanity. We are prepared to offer significant trade agreements and territorial concessions. That is generous, Admiral Gayung replied carefully. But may I ask why your government is suddenly interested in diplomatic relations? When the Villani requested help, the Alterian Council declined to get involved. The ambassador looked uncomfortable. Admiral, we have received intelligence reports about other conflicts involving human forces. Apparently, you have responded to 17 more distress calls since the Battle of Villani Prime. 18, Admiral Gayung corrected. We just received another one yesterday. Admiral, with respect, your species cannot continue to fight every evil force in the galaxy. You will spread yourselves too thin and eventually be defeated. Admiral Gayung smiled. Ambassador, you misunderstand our strategy. We are not trying to fight every evil force in the galaxy. We are trying to teach the galaxy that evil actions have consequences. Every time a predator species attacks innocent civilians, they know that humans might show up, and they know what happens when humans show up. In the months that followed, the pattern repeated itself across multiple star systems. Aggressive civilizations would attack peaceful colonies or trading posts, expecting easy victories. Instead, they would find themselves facing small but determined human forces who fought with tactics no other species could predict or counter. The humans rarely won these battles in traditional terms. They were usually outnumbered and outgunned, but they made their enemies pay such a terrible price for their aggression that word began to spread throughout the galaxy. Attacking innocent civilizations was no longer safe or profitable. On Earth, in the military command center where all these operations were coordinated, General Minjae read the latest intelligence reports with satisfaction. The frequency of unprovoked attacks on civilian populations had dropped by 60% in the past year. General, asked his aide, are we winning this war? General Minjae thought about Captain Minho, Captain Seok, and all the other humans who had died fighting for people they had never met. He thought about the Villani children playing safely in their new parks, and the dozens of other civilizations that now lived without fear because evil forces had learned to fear humans. Lieutenant, we are not trying to win a war. We are trying to change how the galaxy works. We are trying to create a place where the strong protect the weak instead of preying on them. And are we succeeding? Ask me again in 100 years, the general replied. But for now, I think Captain Minho would be proud of what his sacrifice accomplished. That night across the galaxy, the story continued to spread. In trading stations and diplomatic centers, around campfires on colony worlds and in the meeting halls of ancient civilizations, beings spoke in hushed tones about the small, fierce creatures from the outer rim. They told stories about humans who would travel across space to fight for strangers, about warriors who used their own deaths as weapons, about a species so strange and so dangerous that they would sacrifice themselves for people they had never met, simply because it was the right thing to do. And in the dark places where evil beings planned their next campaigns of conquest and destruction, a new calculation entered their thinking. A simple question that had never been asked before in the long history of galactic civilization. What if the humans find out? It was the beginning of a new age, an age where evil would still exist, but where it would no longer be safe. An age where innocent civilizations could call out for help and know that someone might answer. An age where the most fearsome beings in the cosmos had chosen to be heroes instead of monsters, and the galaxy would never be the same.